we're sitting there in the office in January 2021, we're working on Barpay, but we're just getting frustrated because it's like, man, no one's seeing, what this actual Bitcoin stuff is supposed to be used for, or what it, maybe not supposed to be used for, but what it can be used for, these micropayments. What could we build? What could we show our friends that's like, hey, this is a really simple way to understand some of the utility of blockchain. And it's not just about, oh, let me buy this coin and tell my friend to buy it so that the price goes up. Like, in my opinion, that's nonsense. That was never what the original purpose of Bitcoin was supposed to be. This is Joe Pinto. I am one of the co-founders of Haste and the Haste Arcade.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Lampard, and today how Joe DePinto set out to prove the utility of Bitcoin and made the world's first instant leader payout platform. All this and more on Code Story. Joe DePinto was born and raised in Los Angeles and was drafted to play professional baseball in the minors for the White Sox. He's always had an active lifestyle and now lives at the beach and surfs regularly. In 2015, he and his current co-founder started a company called Barpay, which makes it easier to get drinks at busy bars, and the product took off. In January 2021, Joe and his co-founder were sitting in their office, frustrated that no one was getting what Bitcoin, that is BSV, not BTC, was originally created for. They asked themselves, what could we build to illustrate the utility of the blockchain? This is the creation story of Haste Arcade.
We've all been arcades, if you're our age at least. You imagine you go back, you put your quarter in the Pac-Man machine, you get on the leaderboard, and you get to leave like your three initials. But that was really it, right? So these leaderboards, on the Pac-Man machine, maybe they're 20 people, 50 people, whatever. You come back a month later and it's like, oh, cool, I'm still on the leaderboard. But that's really the only satisfaction you get, from actually being skilled at this game. What Haste Arcade does is we use Bitcoin and blockchain specifically for what's called micropayments. So now imagine going and spending that 25 cents to play your Pac-Man game. You get on the leaderboard, and now picture the leaderboard is, 100 people or 1,000 people long. Well, anyone that comes and plays after you, for as long as you're on the leaderboard, you're going to get a fraction of their 25 cents. So if you're in the number one spot, the way that our payouts work is you get, 10% of every subsequent gameplay. If you're in the number 100 spot, you get like 0.01%. So no matter what, as long as you're somewhat skilled at this game, obviously you're playing the games to have fun, but now you have the opportunity and the ability to earn from them. And just for my own personal beliefs, when I say Bitcoin, I'm talking about Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. So BSV would be the ticker symbol. I'm not talking about BTC, which is what I think most people would assume is Bitcoin. That's the one that's trading at like $15,000 or $20,000. That technology doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really have any utility. You can't do micropayments. You can't send really, really small amounts without paying a high fee or having it take a long time for them to get there. So we were just wanting to demonstrate the original, utility of Bitcoin as defined in the Bitcoin white paper. If you wanted to go and sell something for $1 on the internet right now, you pretty much couldn't do it unless you were willing to give up 30 to 40% of your margin just to the credit card fees, right? Not even taking into account any of the other expenses you might have to create that product. That's the problem really that Bitcoin was originally created to solve. It was like, okay, how can we transact faster and cheaper? Well, you need to remove these third parties because they're the ones that are having to charge these fees because they have risks associated with handling these transactions. So basically, we're sitting there in the office in January 2021, we're working on Barpay, but we're just getting frustrated because it's like, man, no one's seeing, what this actual Bitcoin stuff is supposed to be used for, or what it, maybe not supposed to be used for, but what it can be used for, these micropayments. What could we build? What could we show our friends that's like, hey, this is a really simple way to understand some of the utility of blockchain. And it's not just about, oh, let me buy this coin and tell my friend to buy it so that the price goes up. Like, in my opinion, that's nonsense. That was never what the original purpose of Bitcoin was supposed to be. So just to kind of wrap it all up, or how we at least came up with the concept, it was just to demonstrate, the utility of micropayments and something simple that we could build to show our friends, hey, here's, a cool, simple little game that you can play. And if you're good at it, you're going to make a tenth of a penny every time someone else plays, which doesn't sound like a lot. But, like I said, in the arcade, when you have a couple thousand people playing, you can start to make some real money.
Well, let's dive into the MVPs, that first version of the product you built. How long did it take you to build, and what sort of tools did you use to bring it to life?
I gotta mention Dan again. So Dan Wagner, my co-founder at Barpay, and then me and him were the original ones at Haste. We have two other co-founders now who have come on, and they're much more senior level developers, so they've been tremendous help. Dan's the type of person where, if he comes to a problem, he won't stop until he's figured out, like, not just how to solve it, but why the solution works that way. He'll be sitting there for like 14 hours in a row and be like, dude, you need to go to the bathroom? You need like a cup of water? Like, what's going on? Are you all right? He got tired of, hearing developers talking about things and him being on the product management side, not understanding what they were saying. He was like, you know what, I'm gonna start, taking some programming courses, learn how to code. And basically he got good enough to the point where in 2021, we're sitting in the Barpay office. It was like really late on January 2nd. It was the day after New Year's, and I think we were still maybe like a little hungover from New Year's or whatever, but we're just sitting there talking about Bitcoin, and we start talking about that quarter example where it's like, we could split up a quarter and send it to 100 of our friends. That'd be cool. Like, how could we do that? Like, what should be the triggering mechanism? And we started, writing friends' names down. I was like, oh, this kind of looks like a leaderboard. Let's just create some super simple, silly game that, we can show people. And so the original game took Dan maybe an hour or two to program, like the MVP of the MVP, like the very first thing that we were testing. But all that it was you play on your phone, you'd have to connect a wallet, and there's a wallet called Handcash that we use within the BSV ecosystem. And they make it really easy to like sign into other applications. So, you can go and sign in with Google now or sign in with Twitter. Like, this works kind of the same way as that with Handcash. You would basically sign into this website that we were just calling Play Haste at the time. You would choose what level you wanted to play on. So you could play for a penny, 10 cents, $1, $10, $100. You'd say start game. Your entire phone screen would go blank. And then within 2 to 3 seconds, a little yellow dot would show up somewhere on the screen. And the entire purpose of the game was to tap the dot as fast as you can. So your score would be measured in the milliseconds that it would take to actually tap this dot. So say I go on there, I hit play game on the 10-cent level, dot shows up, I tap it, my score is 427 milliseconds. You play after me. Right when you hit start game, I'm going to get a portion of your gameplay cost because I'm already on the leaderboard, but then you go and you score 362 milliseconds. So now you're ahead of me on this leaderboard. Anyone that plays after you, you're now going to be getting a portion of their gameplay spent. So the game was that simple. Basically just tap a dot. But what we saw was it immediately went like viral. I think we probably spent maybe 2 or 3 more days after the original like programming of it, just cleaning up the UI a little bit so that, there was like a rules and how it works displayed. But really that was pretty much it. I mean, it was definitely less than a week idea to proof of concept. And we were testing it, playing it with a couple of our friends around town. Dan, I don't have Twitter. Dan's on Twitter, and he just tweeted about it, tagged the BSV community in it. And like I said, it went viral to a couple thousand people within the first like day or two. People were really, really excited. Like, oh my gosh, this is like such an obvious, easy to understand use for microtransactions and micropayments. And it kind of got, more publication and more press just from that. So I don't know. I think, call it a full week to have idea to, paying customers, I guess, if you will.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted VCSOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's vanta.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com. So you've got the MVP and it's working, obviously, right? It's going viral, people are using it, and they get it. How are you progressing the product from that point? How did you progress it and mature it? And I think what I'm curious about is how you guys built your roadmap and how you went about deciding, okay, this is the next most important thing to build or to address with Haste Arcade.
Yeah, I think with this one, it's probably a little bit different than most startups. We didn't build the MVP thinking that we were going to turn it into anything. We were just doing it because it's like, hey, we love Bitcoin. We want to show people what you can do with Bitcoin. But about a week after we had released it, there was a VC company within the BSV space that ended up writing an article about what we had built. And what they did was they took what we were now calling like our instant leaderboard payout model. And we call it instant leaderboard because, like I said, that hand cash app, if you have that application and you have your notifications turned on, literally every single time someone plays after you, you get a little ping of the Bitcoin hitting your wallet. So it is instant. It's not like, a credit card that takes 24 to 48 hours to actually show up. Basically, they took our instant leaderboard payout infrastructure and, one of the outputs in that payout goes to whoever created the game. So the way to think about it is you have one input, which is the person saying play game for 10 cents, and then you have 100 outputs from that one particular input. And of those outputs, you have your leaderboard positions and then your game developers on there somewhere. Well, they took that structure and they said, let's look at Flappy Birds, this game from 2015 that had, 50 million users at its peak. Super hyper casual game, one of those things that went viral and then kind of like faded away after, a couple months. But to their estimates, the Flappy Birds developers had been making roughly $50,000 to $60,000 a day from ad revenue because that was the only way they were monetized. It was a free game to play, but you would see, a silly ad before or during the game. They said if they would have had this leaderboard structure instead of ad revenue, they would have gone from making $50,000 to $60,000 a day to over $2.5 million a day if people were only playing at the half penny level with the scale of 50 million plus users. So we're reading this and we hadn't even really thought about this at this point. They also said that whoever was holding the number one leaderboard position at that level of scale would have been generating about $250,000 a day of income. So we read that and we're like, holy cow, there's some serious, business model use cases that you can have for this type of stuff within, the casual gaming industry. Who likes ads to begin with? I would gladly pay half of a penny to play a game and not have to see an ad. Then on top of that, I can make money. And then on top of that, the actual game developer can generate way more revenue than the current ad models. So when we saw that, we were like, man, we've been working on Barpay for 6 years. Obviously, it's our first baby, but we love Bitcoin and this just seems like there could be something really cool here. Well, after that article came out, some other people started reaching out to us, people within the BSV space, some other investors. Are you guys building more games? What's your next plan? Basically, what you just said, like, what's your roadmap? And we didn't really have one at the time, other than knowing we wanted to be working in Bitcoin in some capacity. We talked to some of our investors at Barpay. We told them, hey, we created this thing. It kind of went viral. It's doing a little bit more than, I guess, what we thought it would when we put it out. We want to pursue it in some capacity. How would you guys feel about that? And our lead investor at Barpay was actually really excited about the idea. They said, you know what, this sounds really cool. Like, we'd actually want to get involved and invest in that as well if you guys put together a plan for what you want to do with that business. So it was around that point. That had maybe been about, 2 months after the original game had come out. We put out a couple small games along with it. Like, there was one game called Flashcards where basically, you hit play, shows you a math problem, you pick the answer in 2 seconds, you get the next question. If you get it wrong, your streak ends. But it was the time when that lead investor, when they offered to get involved, that we said, okay, if there's going to be real resources and capital behind this, we need to get some real talent in here.
Okay, let's switch to team then. How did you build your team? And I'm curious what you look for in those people to indicate that they're the winning horses to join you.
Fortunately, through Barpay, we had relationships with some pretty good developers, but one gentleman in particular named Eric LaForce, who was basically the lead developer when we first contracted the Barpay work out. There was a firm in Charlotte, North Carolina called Level that did, contracted app development. After that project was done, he hit us up on the side and just said, hey guys, I think this Barpay thing's pretty cool. I'd love to help out if you guys need anything. He probably knew, we were going to need some serious help getting from MVP to scaling that. So him just offering to stay, on in a part-time capacity was a blessing. He was the first person we took this haste idea to, and he said, yeah, you know what, this sounds pretty cool. Let me think about it. Do you mind if I share this with my twin brother, who is also, extremely senior level developer? And Eric came back to us about a week later and said, you know what, I showed this to Keith, and we both think it's about the best idea we've ever seen. And, this coming from a consulting company where they're getting pitched ideas all the time, we thought like, wow, it's pretty cool. So, they asked, what do you want from us? And we said, well, like, quit Level and join us full time. Like, take the plunge into the startup world, as opposed to, the $250,000 a year salary and all the benefits and all that stuff that they were currently working for. They thought about it and they were like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? We went and hired a couple other people. Level at the time had actually just been acquired. So it kind of worked out well where we got to not necessarily cherry pick, but Eric and Keith had really good relationships with some of the really, really experienced and talented developers there. So we got a pretty good team put together really quickly. And at that point, it was like, okay, what do we want to turn this into? Well, we think the business use case is, for game developers, and we think that obviously like gamers can enjoy this too. We should probably build a way for the game devs to implement this ILP service into their games. And then on the other side, like, we need to market to the gamers themselves. So to answer your question about like, how do you put a roadmap together? There were a series of steps that went into it, before we even thought this is something we're going to do full time. But once we had the team, it was much easier to kind of say, okay, we need to put together the software developer kit for the game developers. We need to figure out a way to attract gamers to the arcade, and we need to be developing games in-house as well. So it's kind of like this three-headed monster that we have to address all at the same time. But that was really it. It was, what's going to be the best way, the fastest way to get this concept to gamers and to game developers. And then just step by step, how do you get there?
Let's flip to scalability then. And I understand the blockchain scalability, but there's elements that you've got to build. And in building that first game, I'm sure you had to consider a few of these things. So I'm going to ask this sort of in a bland way and just let you go. Did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or is this something you're finding in any capacity as you grow?
Definitely not something we built to scale from day one. But you hit on it. Blockchain scalability is actually a huge factor when you're talking about things like micropayments. Like, I love talking about this because this is one of what I think is like the most overlooked thing in the entire blockchain space right now. And it's that the miners on these chains have to have an incentive to continue mining the chain, otherwise the chain's going to freeze. I'm mining these blocks for, one of two rewards, either the block reward, which is what people refer to as like the halvings, right? Every block that gets mined, you are getting some amount of Bitcoins for solving that block, but the amount halves every roughly 4 years, right? So right now it's at 6.25 Bitcoins per block. Sure, as long as the price is $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, like that reward is probably going to cover your electric costs. But what happens 20 years from now when the block reward's, less than 1 Bitcoin per block? BTC, by capping the amount of data that they can put in a block, they're basically saying like the transaction fees are only going to be, this much ever. So as a miner, what is my economic incentive going to be 10 years from now when I'm looking at BTC and it's like I'm going to spend $100,000 to make $105,000 on the BTC chain, but on BSV I'm going to spend $100,000 and make $500,000 because there is an infinite amount of transactions that can be fit into each one of these blocks. So with us, we needed, dozens and dozens and hundreds of transactions per second going on. You can't do that on any other blockchain that we've been able to find. And we've looked into Solana, we've looked into Ethereum. Ethereum's not even close. BSV is the only blockchain that actually scales to the levels of global adoption. You have the scalability of the chain is one thing, but then the scalability of our actual technology, that's also been a learning curve, right? So the first game we put out that I was describing, we weren't planning, on anything crazy happening with that. Could get hacked. Like I think someone actually was able to hack it for like $100 one time, something like that. Well, we bring in all of these, senior level developers, and we're talking about game development. And the first issue that comes up is called, being server authoritative. So basically what we've seen, and this has been probably the biggest issue in terms of scaling and letting other outside developers submit games so far, is that traditionally a hyper casual game, no one really cares if someone's able to, get in and hack the scoreboard and put themselves at the top of the leaderboard because there's no money on the line. Well, now that money's on the line, it does matter. So all of our games have to be architected in a way that is server authoritative. So basically, that's been a new learning curve for the hyper casual game developer. Now, your AAA games like Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, those are typically going to be server authoritative. But the market that we're at least originally going after, this is something new to them. We've had to build not just like a good SDK, but the documentation around it has to be really freaking good. Otherwise, like it's just something that most of these, casual game devs don't understand.
As you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built thus far, what are you most proud of?
Maybe the relationships, more so than the products themselves. Dan and I have been working together, if you count baseball, like for over 10 years now. Eric and Keith, since Eric's been involved with Barpay for, 7+ years, and then the team that they've put together. It just seems like, we've been able to build a solid team around this concept. And then the products in particular, personally, I'm really proud of Barpay just in the sense that, for a tech startup with 2 non-technical co-founders to survive for 7 years is probably not in the norm, but just kind of grinding and being persistent with that. And then when it comes to Haste, the concept behind ILPs and the SDK that we built for the instant leaderboard payouts, I see so many applications for that in a blockchain world. And I'm not saying that we get there. I don't know that blockchain actually becomes the thing that, some people say it could be, where it replaces the internet. I personally hope it gets there. I see a lot of value for, a trustless protocol where you don't need third parties to intervene and you don't have risk management associated with third parties. But I think that SDK could really, really be interesting, outside of even just gaming, right? Like another example I like to give is education. You can now take this leaderboard payout structure, you could create a token if you're a school or a university, and now instead of kids just taking tests and, okay, Noah got the best grade in the class, he got an A+, Joe got, the third best, he got an A-. Well, let's start valuing this in real time. And let's say, okay, whoever gets the highest score on this particular test is going to earn 100 of this school's tokens. Whoever gets the second best score is going to earn 90. Whoever gets the third best, 80, etc. Well, what can I do with those tokens? Now I can go to the cafeteria and actually use these tokens. Now I can go to the school bookstore and use these tokens. It's like you can basically incentivize anything now in real time just because of like how small, the value that you're sending back and forth can be. Like these tokens don't have to be worth more than a penny a piece, but the fact that you can actually do something with it and you can pretty much gamify anything, that's probably what I'm most proud or excited about, is just like, if blockchain does go on to become a big thing, I see what we've built with ILPs being a very, very useful tool that, not just game developers, basically anyone that's doing something competitive could integrate with their platform or with their software.
Let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
We build out this arcade and, again, we're making micropayments, right? We're making micropayments from a couple thousand people, which doesn't add up to a lot to run a company off of. If you're one person, you're making an extra couple $100 or $1,000 a month, like that's great. But when you've got 8 employees who are on, full-time salary, it's like, okay, micropayments aren't paying the bills yet. There needs to be massive scale to actually be able to generate a profit from micropayments. We released another product called Take It, which was, or it still is, an NFT marketplace. You think about these Bored Ape Yacht Clubs or some of these other NFTs that have sold for thousands of dollars, and it's like, man, how do they come up with the value of that? Like, it seems like they're pumping it, they're shilling it, they're getting celebrities to say, oh, I'm going to buy one of these, and that's going to drive the price up. The idea behind Take It was, there's nothing wrong with spending a lot of money or making a lot of money, but like, let's let the market actually decide what the value is instead of, the creator or the celebrities that they get involved with it. So the way that Take It works, you list an NFT as the creator. Someone can come to the platform, right? They see this thing drops. You can come in, you can say, that's cool NFT, I'm going to take it. So you take that NFT, you're holding on to it, you paid $50 or 1 BSV, me as the creator, I got that revenue. Well, let's say, our friend Alex comes in. She's like, you know what? I like that NFT and takes it from you, Noah. When you took it the first time, the price automatically increases by 30%. So where you spent $50, next time, what would that be? $65? Alex comes in, she takes it from you. So she pays $65. You get your original $50 back. You also get 6% of the 30% markup that she paid. So now you're actually walking away with like, what, $52 or $53? You have a little bit of profit on what you had originally bid. You can go and take the NFT back from her, but every time it gets taken, the price increases by 30%. So that's creating a little bit of an income source now for the person that took the NFT previously, for the creator, because they're getting a royalty, and then the platform also is taking, a couple percents per take. If you actually like that NFT, you're guaranteed to either get the NFT or to get a profit on your bid if someone takes it from you. So that platform, Take It, has since, that launched full-time, I think, August of last year. That's gone on to do, as much revenue as the arcade. Since, the arcade is 2 years old at this point, that platform's only about 6 months. So I guess, kind of wrapping all that back together was those early learnings about follow the money and follow, where the most demand is. The money, on Take It is pretty substantial. It's pretty significant. And, we made a team decision to build that out and not have it be like a little stepchild. But if you go to takeitnft.com now, you'll see it's just advanced as hastearcade.com. So, again, separate platform. We figured out a way to actually have them both work together. We do have like an NFT marketplace within the arcade, so you can buy, cool skins or stuff like that for different characters within the games. But, taking that learning from the Fast Pass, applying it within Haze and saying, this Take It thing has some serious demand, it's generating significant revenue. Let's go and actually build this out into its own standalone platform, and that's exactly what we've done.
So we talked about mistake and what happened there, and but a little bit different spin here. If you could go back to the beginning of your projects, of Haste Arcade, of Take It, what would you do different? Or where would you consider taking a different approach? It doesn't have to be a mistake. It doesn't have to be something that went wrong, but you would tweak a little bit.
I personally would have wanted to start programming sooner. I know Dan would say the exact same thing, and Dan got started really early. It just feels to me, at least, if you're in the technology space, learning how to program is if it's not already a necessity, it's like the old school sales guys and marketing guys, like what the role I would typically fall into, they're just going to be non-existent moving forward. Like you can go and pay Google now to do all the stuff automated. It's like, you don't need to have, a huge sales force anymore. It's just, you go and you pump money into the Google machine and it pumps out results. And that's, I don't know, that's what I've learned the most, I guess, is, the days of cold calling and, the traveling salesman. I enjoyed that with Barpay, but I think that, if that's the industry you're in, if that's the role that you're playing, that it's probably not going to go on for too much longer, at least in the technology space. I feel like everything's going to be automated. Technology can do so much more than one person. I don't like to look back on things and have regret. I think that, most decisions you make them for a specific reason in that moment and you move forward with it. So I can't really say there's anything I would have done differently other than, I would have preferred to have begun learning about programming, years before I did. And I'm sure Dan would say the same thing.
Joe, last question. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world. They can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit several times?
Have persistence. I don't know. I mean, VCs will tell you fail fast or have a home run. I agree with that to some sense, but at the same time, I think you have to have persistence. And there's going to be, no matter how cool your idea or your concept is, there's going to be days where you're just like, man, people just aren't getting it, or am I going crazy? What do I do? And it's during those days where you've really got to just focus on, okay, this is one day. What can I do for the next 10 minutes to be productive? Can I write a one paragraph blog post about my product? Can I go and read a one paragraph blog post about a competitor's thing or some marketing strategy that a competitor is doing? Without persistence, I don't see any entrepreneurs that could actually be successful, because no one's going to have a perfect story. I mean, Instagram maybe is the closest example of that, but it's just, you're going to come to difficult times, difficult decisions, times where you feel like quitting, and it's just you just have to keep going forward. You have to persist. And that would be the one thing that, I don't think that takes any skill. It just takes heart.
Couldn't agree more. Fantastic advice. Well, Joe, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Haste Arcade, and looping us in on Take It.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, Noah.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
Now Taxes is 100% free when you file in the TurboTax app if you didn't file with us last year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just do your own taxes in the app by 2/18.
What if I have lots of forms?
All good, all 100% free.
What if I had 3 jobs?
Still 100% free.
What if I once saw Bigfoot?
That has nothing to do with taxes, so still 100% free.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Now this is taxes. See if you qualify in the TurboTax app. Excludes TurboTax Live, must start and file in app by 2/18.